Yeah, recording, okay. I was wondering if I should have written down a first line or if it's better to just like, I think I'll go. The reason I wanted to do this video is that people believe that magic is not real. And we are experiencing a lot of suffering, I think, because of that. And I think we're seriously underestimating ourselves and we're seriously underestimating what's possible. So I wanted to make this video about how we can approach magic without losing our intellectual side. Like, how can we approach something so mysterious, so unknown, but frame it in such a way that the modern mind can get closer to it without, analyzing it to death and without just saying, since I don't understand it, it's bullshit. There is like a sweet spot in between those. And I'm that kind of person, I like analyzing things, I like intellectualizing. So for me to get close to this idea, it required me to build that sort of thought bridge. And that's maybe the idea of this video, is to share that thought bridge and allow someone else to go from just like, oh, I don't know what that is. It's hard to get there, and give you some tools to navigate this space, basically. So first, like, what would magic be? Magic would be being able to manipulate reality in some way that is outside of regular physics. That's how I think of it. So as an example, I would think of, if I have to go to the gym a certain times per week, or I have to eat a certain amount of calories in order to have a beautiful body, that wouldn't be magic. Magic would be like, I just create a beautiful body without going to the gym or without counting calories. That's a basic example. But with wealth, it would be like manifesting money without working hard. So we would be affecting this reality by working outside of it. So there is this zone, as I think of it, like we have the zone of what science tells us, what we can research, what we can mathematically understand. And that zone is always growing as we learn more, and we do these experiments that makes us understand more about reality. But no matter how big that sphere gets, no matter how fast or how big it grows, there will always be the zone of what is outside of the known. And magic would be to affect the zone inside by pulling on forces outside. So it's the interplay between the known and the unknown. So let's say I would be using magic only to affect the unknown zone. Like that would not be interesting to people. We want to use magic to affect what we can see here in 3D Newtonian space. So for me, the sort of definition of magic would be to use the knowledge of the unknown or the intuition about the unknown to affect the known. I'm using the word metaphysics as a phrase to describe the combination of these. So metaphysics for me is not only physics as in gravity and atoms and, the stuff we learn in school. It would also be like, what can we know about the unknown? And the combination of those is metaphysics. So if you want to find like a good string of words to define magic, I would say magic is the applied knowledge about metaphysics. That's how I see it. Do we need to learn magic? I mean, if you want to affect reality nowadays, since everyone has access to the internet, I would say if you want to affect reality, you might as well spend 5 years learning how to day trade. Because if you have money, you can affect every facet of reality. You can buy good health, you can buy good experiences, you can buy relationships to a certain extent, like people like generous people. So money is, the closest thing we have to magic. Money allows us to affect reality in pretty much every way. So you don't have to learn about magic to get like extraordinary results. You can just like learn how to trade crypto or something. And that would give you pretty much as an effective way of affecting reality. the reason I'm interested in this is just like my taste, I guess. I just find it fascinating, like spirituality and psychology and philosophy. And if I could pick between like affecting the world through money or affecting the world through magic, I would prefer magic, because I also believe you pick up these lessons that you're going to be able to use like in dreams, and you can use it in all different life areas, because magic has to do with truth to a deep extent. Whereas if you make a shit ton of money, you could do all of that, you could get very far, and you could still suffer, you could still be, a horrible person. And we can see this, like if you look at the richest people in the world that we see on the news, most of us are like, would I trade places with that person to get there? Would I want to wake up and be that guy? No, Jesus Christ, lives a horrible life. Whereas if I can like be myself, learn about the world, learn about the spirit world, and create heaven on earth, that's a more exciting idea to me. This video will be very broad in its scope. I'm going to touch on, I'm going to try to paint like a very rough picture of the entire landscape of the thinking. So a lot of it would just be like very quickly, very shallow, just to give you all the pieces of the puzzle. And then I'd be happy to like get some feedback and like which of these areas are most interesting or needs more explanation. I'll dive into those. So I'll just start painting the picture and then we'll see. But magic is applied metaphysics. So metaphysics means that we try to gauge what is going on in the unseen realities. And you don't have to be super hippie to get this. We have quantum physics, you have string theory, you have the observer effect. Science is already telling us that the world is a really wonky and strange place. Like the more you zoom in to how things work, the more it seems strange. So science is already sort of nudging us in this direction. My personal view, and this stuff we're talking about now is not going to be verifiable, but it is a way to think about it, and all of the magical stuff will make sense. My view is like there's an infinite number of universes, an infinite number of realities. That means that there's an infinite numbers of me out there doing different things. These universes, some of them are very similar to ours. It's just like, oh, I didn't grow up in Sweden. I grew up somewhere else. And some of these universes are so strange that I couldn't go there and like have breakfast because they're operating from like, oh, it's only sound, or, they don't have physics at all. Or, if we're talking infinite, it's going to be like, it's hard for our day-to-day brain to grasp what that would mean. But if you think like, oh, my dreams are strange, like, yes, those are the different universes. That is how strange they are. And even stranger, when we dream, we go into these spaces that are so strange that when we wake up, we cannot even recall them because there's no way for our mind to conceptualize what's going on there. Maybe it comes as like a mood to us or a symbol, but we wouldn't be able to get that. So in the metaphysics, in the unseen realities, there is like a bunch of stuff going on. I have a connection to this stuff because I am operating here in this reality, but I'm also operating in these other realities. I like to think of it as like a hand, and I would be like the person you see now would be the nail of the hand that is a part of, a finger, which would be like an oversoul or a higher self. But then there's also like a bunch of other branches or fingers coming out. And these are all a part of the hand. And you get to these like bigger and bigger and bigger states until you get to God. So it's like a hierarchy of selves, I would say. And there's a big thing going on right now in time as we experience it. And this video I'm making is a part of that movement of like reminding ourselves and reminding each other of like, oh, remember that actually we belong to the same one thing. So hurting each other would be like hurting yourself. hating someone would be hating yourself. We might say like, okay, but then it's all an illusion. It's all Maya. It's all, a simulation. But that sort of implies that it's not real, and there is nothing else that is real. Like, this is as real as it gets. When we die from this incarnation, we're going to still be in the one reality. It's going to be a different experience. But, when we say like this is not real, the thing I would frame it as, this is a drama, this is a period piece, this is a sort of flavor or a specific creative experience that the divine wanted to have. And this is it. And sort of finding that subtle balance of seeing everything here as more malleable, I think the word is in English, or we can change more here than we are taught to in the culture, that at least the culture I grew up in. The biggest thing that we are discovering right now is how much mind influences matter. It's nothing strange to anyone nowadays to talk about placebo, like, if I think this medicine will work for me, it will work for me. But when you talk about manifestation and, I can think my way to this fancy car, most people would object and say, no, it's not true. You can only affect, to a certain degree. And when we talk about magic, I think for me, it just means like opening that space up a bit. If you look at Jesus, an example, he was a master magician. What were the limits to his magic? He could raise the dead. Like, there were literally no limits. He couldn't fly, but he could walk on water. So I guess it's, pretty close to flying. And he allegedly lives forever. So within magic, the thing we're doing is just like taking the agreed upon idea of the placebo effect being real. If we have that on sort of one end where everyone is in agreement, and then you have like, Jesus is a master magician, and you could also be a master magician. The only thing I want to do with talking about magic is like pushing that space and giving people the sense of empowerment, like, oh, there are ways to affect reality through mind, through symbolic resonance, through ceremony, through different rituals, that is effective and that is real and that is worth spending time on. Because I also think, like, if you look at what popular culture is most popular, what people are really attracted to, it's like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and all these new romantic fantasy novels that are coming out that all contain this supernatural. We have sort of decided as a society to really push that down, and it's sort of clawing its way back through these cultural expressions. And I want to give you the permission to like open up the idea, like, well, what if it is real? What if we could do supernatural things, meaning using these unseen forces to affect the unseen? How would you approach that? So if you're not okay with like, say, I believe in magic, or I believe I can do magic, maybe you can give yourself the permission to like say, I want to explore what magic means and how I could approach it. It's also helpful to get closer to this space if you realize that it's not a binary. So there aren't, like in Harry Potter, I think some people are magicians and then some people are not. I think that's a hurtful idea. Why would it work like that? That doesn't make sense. Like, why would God be like, oh, you deserve this and you don't deserve that? I would say everyone has the same opportunity here. Then of course we are differently talented, just like we're, differently talented in everything else. But if you think about organizing a date night for the person you love, and you light the candles, you turn on the music, you dress nicely, you make the apartment space, you cook some fantastic dinner, if you want to be really open with this, you can say like that is a sort of magic. You're pulling on these different symbolic resonances to cast a love spell on someone. And if that makes you feel like, oh, but then it doesn't matter, then magic is bullshit because that's just, that's okay. But I'm giving it to you as an opening of the space. What if you take the idea of date nights? Like, I want this person to feel loved. I want our love channel to be more opened. What if you just take the idea of date night and you apply the very same concept to wealth? How would that look? And it's going to take a little while, probably, just like getting your imagination going. What would you do? How would you organize? What kind of actions are you taking? But that is pretty much what I'm suggesting, is to use that intuitive sense of symbols, sound, space, movement, taste, all of that, to live in such a way, but not only with love, with all types of relationships, with making money, with your health. And I think we do appreciate this kind of way of living when we see a successful artist. So one of my favorite artists is Young Lean, Swedish rapper, and he's very much living in this way. He's creating his art in this intuitive sense. And when he's not, as I understand it, he makes like pottery and paints, and he's living this way all the time. And as a society, we're really good at appreciating that. We see someone like him, we say, oh, this is fantastic, we want more of this. But only if the person is successful, meaning only if the art that they make resonate with people and, bring money, etc. I believe, based on, what I've seen on this specific person, that he would do the exact same things even if he wasn't successful. He would live the same way, he would still be creating. And now, I don't want to say randomly because that's kind of unfair, but we don't know what artistry is going to be, bringing in a certain amount of cash. It could very well be the case that something so strange like the hip hop he was making when he started could have fallen on deaf ears. That is very possible, and people would just like see it and not, vibe with it. He would still be doing his thing. Including the norms and the behaviors that society in general thinks are bad, he would be doing the same things, but we would see him very differently. So living magically and living in a creative or artistic way is pretty much the same thing. But I don't want you to take that and think, oh, well, I'm not a creative person, or I don't make music, or I don't paint, so therefore this doesn't apply to me. Magic and creativity applies to all areas of life. Even if you're like a cat breeder who does like cat shows or whatever, that is your creativity. Or if you like motors and cars, that is your way of creating in the world. So living magically and living creatively is very similar. It's about taking these ideas and making it into reality. But the magical sense is like, okay, where are these ideas coming from? You have a more of a metaphysical view of like, oh, there are higher realities. There are unseen dimensions where these things are sort of streaming in, and I'm turning that into this reality. I am creating the reality that I'm seeing right now through this. That also means that instead of like, oh, I want to go to heaven, or I hope I go to heaven when I die, the magical way of seeing that is like, well, if I open up to my idea of heaven, what would heaven be to me specifically? And we're going to have different ideas of heaven. Like, that's my personal taste in things. Who is there? What are we doing? What are we drinking? Etc. So if I take that and I sort of start to live from that heavenly point, what kind of actions feel natural to me? What am I doing? What am I creating? All of a sudden, I'm going to look around and see like, oh shit, I'm actually channeling heaven on earth. That's what I'm doing. That's the sort of big magic that I'm suggesting here. This is a magical view of seeing the world. It's very different from how society sees it, or even how religion sees it in many cases. But the root idea here is that we are divine, creative entities creating different realities. And in this incarnation, I'm way more interested in trying to create heaven on earth. But I'm also sure that once everyone is on board, once we have the whole planet awakened to their own divinity and everyone is creating heaven on earth, after a certain, time, we're going to want to probably experience something else. So you can't expect, like, if you want to go down the magical path, you can't expect society to, or even like your friends or family or whatever, to support you in this way, because the way of thinking is very differently. I think it's time that we try to bring it out in the open more. And there are a lot of people doing this, but you can't expect like your decisions is going to resonate with the people around you, because the magical way of seeing things, such as the death is nothing to be afraid of. Death will be an interesting learning experience. I mean, people are gonna react to that. So if you go down the magical path, it might be a bit lonely to start with, but then you're gonna find other people who are also interested in alchemy, esotericism, hermeticism, things like this, and you're gonna find those people and help each other to go down this path. Just like we talked about, the concept of date night could be a door opener for thinking about how to use magic. I also think the idea of like, what's the vibe? And that sort of thinking is a very good starting point to think about magic. Because nowadays anyone can go into a room and say, oh, the vibe was good, or the vibe was something like this. And that's a big part of magic is frequency, is the mind, is the subconscious beliefs that we have. So if I go into a room where everyone believes like it's a nice place to be, I want to be here, I'm not looking at my watch, I think this will be a fun night, I think people here are friendly, I feel like I can relax, I can dance, the vibe will be good. And what we're really saying is like, the collective field of beliefs or the collective field of ideas and emotion is attractive to me right now. That's it. Would be strange to say, how's the party? Well, the collective field, we're not going to do that. The vibe was cool. But it is very central to practicing magic, is this idea of like putting myself in a certain state. Usually when people say like, oh, can you do magic? Can you like make a car appear out of nowhere, a luxury Lamborghini? That's not, I mean, we talked about, the limits, and if Jesus could raise the dead, I'm sure he could, and he could make water into wine. I'm sure he could like create a Lamborghini if he wanted to. So it's not really, but I'm definitely not there. The thing I can do, though, is to ask, like, okay, what does a Lamborghini symbolize to me? Why do I want a Lamborghini? Okay, I want to feel like I'm free. I can go, like, anywhere I want to. There's some sort of autonomy. I want to feel like comfort because I'm sitting real nice. I want to have the experience of, like, the music in there. So I want to be able to, like, have some artistry while I'm, free. So I want to be free, comfortable. I want to live in a beautiful way. If you're a car person, you probably also think about how the I don't know, acceleration feels. I don't know if that would be the thing for me with the Lamborghini. But okay, once we've identified these things, like what is it actually I'm looking for? Autonomy, beauty, comfort, freedom. The starting point of any magic is to put myself into that state of like, I am free, I am beautiful, I am creating beauty around me, I am comfortable, hopefully, checking in with your body. And sort of once you're in that state, the trick is to stay in that state and then start to effortlessly take action and flow from that state. And odds are, like, sooner or later, you're gonna notice that you're sitting in a Lamborghini. That's usually how this has worked for me personally. If I'm able to sustain the state of the thing I'm trying to create with magic for a long enough time, it actually happens. However, if you go to like standard manifestation stuff and you do vision boards or affirmations about the Lamborghini, odds are probably you're going to see a Lamborghini on the street and you're going to say, oh, I manifested this. Or your cousin is going to get a Lamborghini, or you're going to get a Lamborghini, but then you're going to crash it the day after. So I think that way of I'm not saying it's either or, like manifestation or magic. They're, very similar, and manifestation is like maybe a subcategory of magic or a specific type of magic. But for me personally, I would rather do like a little bit more work and think a little bit harder about what I'm trying to achieve, and then getting into that state. Because also in many times we notice, like, once we're in that state, we don't need the specific form that we wanted. And this is something you see over and over with relationships. A miserable person says, I would be happy if I just had a partner. They get a partner, and then they notice, after 1.5 years that, like, I'm equally miserable because the external form wasn't what they were actually looking for. They were looking for love, or, a physical sensation, or, company or sharing or stuff like that. And the better way is, of course, to start being in those ways right away, and then seeing what kind of form manifests from that. Because we aren't always, or the ego part of us is not always the best judge of what's the best natural form for this to take. And that's sort of the creative act. The creative act is not like, oh, I want it to look exactly in a specific way. The creative act is like a continuous flow of turning mind into matter. And I know, talking about this, some part of me is always like checking in of like, oh, it's easy for me to say because I'm a white guy in Sweden. I have all the privilege in the world. So of course I can talk about, I am manifesting my reality, or like I'm turning my ideas into physical matter. And it's easy to say for me, whereas you could see someone in like a war zone and like, okay, are they manifesting the war? I'm not going to spend too much time in this video talking about that specific problem with magic. If you believe that is case enough for magic to not be real, or for us to, use the supernatural powers to affect reality, that's okay. But what I can encourage you to do is to look at speakers who talk about magic, who are Black, or are women, or grew up poorly, who are different from me, if that helps you to approach the subject. Because I understand, like, I understand the way of thinking, and I respect it. But just so you know, they're going to say the same things that I say. Like, I don't have a different view from them. I have a different starting point. In my life term started differently. So I had more opportunities to practice this. But you could also go back through history, and you will see, like, the people who talked about this lived in very different ways, and they were saying the same things. We're talking about alchemy, we're talking about hermeticism, we're talking about esoteric subjects that have been around since the ancient Egyptians. So you do what you want, but just find a speaker where you feel like you can take the subject matter seriously and not have these sort of obstacles in the way. So as I said, the magical view of the world has a lot to do with consciousness and a lot to do with mind. I would say we generally think as the physical world as primary and our mind as secondary. So if you have imagination, fantasy, dreams, if someone wants to share their dream with you, it's going to be like, oh, that's the worst possible subject. Like, why would I want to hear about your dreams? Whereas the magical point of view would be like, dreams are very interesting. because you're going to different levels of reality and doing a bunch of work and doing a bunch of cool shit. And then we're waking up in this reality. Like, we're never fully asleep. We're just shifting consciousness through different unseen dimensions or universes. That's awesome. So the magical way of thinking is to take your dreams very seriously, and you take your imagination very seriously. Like a child who's just like making stuff up all the time, and we sort of grow out of that. But if you want to do magic, you have to make sure to go back into being a child in that way, and take those intuitive images very seriously, because that is the way to live magically, is to just rely a little bit on what's going on in this room and rely a lot on imagination and intuition. And this is also why the zone between like having a full-blown psychosis and living magically, I mean, I think it's almost non-existent. If I told you how I'm thinking day to day now, if I told that to a like very traditionally trained therapist or psychologist, they might say, "Oh, you're having a psychosis. You're losing grip on reality. Like you're not doing this as you're supposed to." But if you live magically, you'll be like, "Yes, that is the way. This is just one. This is just one dimension. I don't take it so seriously. I don't take what's going on here super seriously, because this is just one part of a much bigger play that's going on." And this means, like, in practice, if I think sugar is really dangerous and sugar is really bad for me, and I touch a bit of sugar, I get it in me, I'm gonna get super sick, because I believe that. If I believe like, no, it's fine, who cares? It's just sugar, I eat it, nothing happens. And on the opposite end of that, if you want to talk about magic crystals or, magical amulets, they are magical, but it requires a lot of belief and a lot of, just in the same way, but the opposite. So if I believe a certain color will help me attract wealth, and I go around with this color, and I have a different stance, and it helps me get into the state that I want to be in, and I act from that stance, of course it's going to be working. But it's not only belief, it's not only mind. Like if someone chops my arm off with a machete, I'm not a strong enough magician to grow it out, so we can't like ignore physical reality. And with the crystals and stuff, there are resonance patterns to other dimensions. Certain colors do have certain resonances. And so we can actively start learning about this. But when you learn about it, it's important to treat it lightly, with like a soft hand. Don't take it as like a science. And don't say like someone else has the right to tell you what a specific tarot card actually means. No. Your intuition about what that tarot card means is just as true. No one is the authority here. I promise you that. I want you to feel like when you pull a tarot card and you're like, oh, it means this, it means that for you. And then you can learn like, oh, in Persian religion, water meant this. Okay, that's cool. That's like an addition to your symbolic language and your symbolic toolbox. That's amazing. But if you didn't know that and you interpreted it another way, your interpretation was not wrong. So living magically, you're doing this symbolic, you're taking these symbolic actions all the time, and you're not tied to causation and effect as we usually think about it. Like, I have to struggle real hard to get, money enough to go by. Nature doesn't work like that. You can just do what feels natural to you, whatever your talents and creative intuitions are. And I promise you that you will not die. Like, nature and the universe and reality doesn't work like that. You can be yourself, take effortless, natural action, and you will get the resources you need to survive and feel good. That is true, as much as I can tell. it's a scary truth because there is this like system, trying to create, this is not a conspiracy theory. I don't think there's like any specific person trying to control you, but the system has like a life of its own and a willingness to live on its own. It's like an entity, call it capitalism or the matrix or whatever. And it benefits a lot from tying people down into, these specific slave-like boxes. And it thrives on the idea that that is the only way you're going to survive. But if you take like a few minutes to think about that, is that true throughout history? If you zoom out, is that true throughout nature? Doesn't seem to be. You can be yourself, do what you're excited about, and that will translate into everything you need. There's a fear that comes with this. It's like, well, if I don't struggle, I'm just going to be lazy. I'll just be on my couch watching TV all day. My experience is that that is not true. Every human being, every soul is at its root. The very thing we're here to do is to create in different ways. So yeah, you're going to be on the couch for like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe even take a nap, forbidden nap. But then you're going to be like, it would be fun to blah, blah, blah. And that's your soul expressing itself in reality. That's you using your imagination to start taking effortless action. And if you just stick with that, whatever that is, if it's cooking or making music or creating events or writing or whatever, don't limit it to like traditional art. It can be any type of creation that will, people will enjoy that. And after a while, they're going to be like, hey, can I, give you some money for this? And then, it starts rolling. So that would be like the magical way of living, is to live creatively, intuitively, from a place of trust and a place of learning. Then there are these like specific magical spells as well. You can buy spell books. You have Aleister Crowley, you have Agrippa, you have Marcello Ficino, these guys who have written books about spells. If you pick up an Aleister Crowley book and try to read his spells, it's not going to make sense. You're going to be like, what the fuck is this? What are these words? I don't understand. And I think you're a fool if you try to do his spells. I think you're wasting your time. And from the people I've seen in the magical space who recreate like these spells, there's one that takes like a year to do, and there are people actively using their life force to recreate a spell he made up. That is wasted. Your magic is so multidimensional. It's going to be very specific to you. Colors, symbols, movement. It's just going to be your specific spell for you. You can find hints and you can find inspiration and you can learn a lot from different magicians throughout the ages, and I encourage you to do that. But you can't believe you can copy what they've done, do the same thing, because when they are doing it, they are a different person, living in a different time. They're in a different country. They're in a different state of mind. There is like, if you look at reality holistically, and there's like 45 different things going on, even if you copy like 3 of these, meaning I said the same words, I also had a candle lit, I also held a flower, you're only copying a very thin slice of all that is at that point. So for you to create your spell, it has to resonate on all these multiple levels, which we can't even put words on, but they're going to come to you intuitively. So if you want to make a specific ceremony or a specific spell for creating wealth, of course you have to create that space, both in space and in time, to do that. But then what kind of flowers, it doesn't have to be flowers, but maybe, what am I doing? What kind of words am I using? Those are going to be specific to you, and you have to believe 100% that those are true. And if you do, it's going to come very natural to you. You can start very small with this, like, today I wake up, I really want to have a day that's, very smooth. okay, so I can spend like a little bit of time in my morning to like, okay, I'm gonna make a smoothness spell. What would that be? Or maybe I put like body lotion on my body. I like clean my hair. I organize the apartment a little bit. I put on some nice socks, whatever. And you set yourself into the state of smoothness and you put on some smooth music. And yes, this is the magic. Like, this is how you start slowly, easily. And then you just take that further and further and further until you have like a full blown actual spell that you write down in your little spell book. There are things we can do to speed this up using demonic forces. I don't want to talk too much about that because I don't recommend it. It's demonic because, there's a price to pay for anything. Also, outside of the consensus idea of what is moral and not. So I just want you to know when we talk about this that like there are boosters you can do to speed up this. You can. I don't recommend it because there's always a price to pay for that. I think that's a good point to end this. Again, I try to just paint you a picture. My hope is that you've seen this and you feel like there are like some openings in your mind, like, okay, magic could be real. Like it's not just made up. There are ways I can get closer to this in small ways, both in my mind and then in my practical actions. It's basically about like the more I understand about the unseen reality and use the unseen realities to affect the seen reality, we can create results that will look supernatural from the outside. It's going to look like, holy shit, what happened to this person? Or that person was so lucky that this happened. And you're going to know like, well, yeah, it was luck, but because I made luck happen. So it's a different way of seeing the universe, of seeing yourself. I hope like if you get sick somehow, like if you get an injury or if you get a cold, you won't start thinking, oh, it was bacteria that made me sick, or like it was, this specific gym exercise. No, it's a symbolic projection of your mind that's going on. So if you want to heal yourself, and the body loves healing itself, it's healing itself all the time. You have to figure out like, what is my soul trying to say? The soul is not trying to punish you by like hurting you and making you suffer. It's trying to call your attention. If your hands are hurting, a lot, what does that mean? It's something with like taking action that's hurting you. You're not doing it in some way. You're too tense. You don't have open hands. You're not willing to receive. You have to start thinking this way. So magic to me is very real. It's worth my time learning about, investigating, and practicing. You might as well, if you think it's bullshit, you can just become a great artist, create that way and pretty much do all the same things. I just think this stuff is really interesting and really fun because it ties, everything together: philosophy, psychology, spirituality, the unseen to the seen. Everything is tied together by this worldview, and I personally enjoy living this way. So get back to me like with questions if you want me to talk about different traditions, like how does alchemy or whatever tie into this. If you want specific books to read to learn about this, and you want me to talk about those. If you want me to talk more about the practice part, or how to deal with friction, like what do you do if you do everything right but the world doesn't respond? How do we navigate that? Whatever topic that I've sort of touched upon that you think sounds interesting and you want to hear me say more about, then just let me know and I'll make a new video on it. And thank you so much.